Hey guys, East from FGC Academy here. Recently, Capcom released a Season 2 update for Street Fighter V. This includes a slew of changes for the characters, as well as mechanics updates for the entire system of the game. It can be a little bit difficult to sift through the notes that they released, so what we're doing here today is taking a look at some of the more influential changes that you should be on the lookout for Season 2. Let's take a look. I've always thought that given the toolset that Juri has, she seemed like a very interesting character, especially in Street Fighter 4. And moving into Street Fighter 5, the fact that she's in this game, I was really excited to try her out and see how her moves kind of worked in this game, just because her character archetypes were really interesting to me. And when I tried to play the character in Season 1, I was a little bit disheartened because it seemed like she had all these moves and tools, but none of them fit together in a very coherent way or in such a way that the rest of the casts did. And so while she was a character that I really wanted to be good in season 1, she really wasn't. And the fact that her moves were just really difficult to use and the way you had to play her was so precise really turned me off to her. And as a result, a lot of people thought she was one of the worst characters in the game. Going into Season 2, Capcom really made great changes that made her attacks fit together in a better way so that she seems like a more coherent and complete character than she was previously. Just looking at some of the buffs here, her V skill has, on level 2, has faster startup, going from 14 to 10. And the V skill, we'll see a lot of changes, and we'll talk about those a little bit later. But the fact that this move seemed almost useless in Season 1, and the fact that it's much faster in Season 2, really makes me hopeful for the fact that she'll be able to get more mix-ups for the left to right. Anyway, going forward, she can now cancel the V skill from her Fuharin Kyaku attacks. And basically what those attacks are, because nobody knows the name of her attacks, the attacks that you have to store and release, the releases now are cancelable into V skill, with the exception of the EX version. So now you have the option of doing the fireball and then immediately going into V trigger to hitting, or to going behind your opponent and hitting them. The move did see a few other changes as well that aren't listed here. The first being the fact that it has more juggle potential, so opponents trying to jump away will likely be able to get juggled. And it does, but however, it does have less projectile invincibility and has a bigger hurt box. I think Capcom's message here is they want the attack to be less used for fireballs, to get through fireballs, although it's still possible, and more used for left-right mix-ups, much in the way that Cammy's Spin Knuckle is. In addition to that, her V-Trigger Fireball is slower. That might not seem like a very strong buff right now, or it might not even seem like a buff at all. But the fact that her V-Trigger Fireball is slower means that she can immediately do the V-Trigger Fireball, and she can basically wait and force you to make a decision or push you to the corner, depending on what the opponent does. So I think this will be really good for her to kind of hone in on what your opponent's responses are and punish them for them. Continuing along, her crouching medium kick is now at plus advantage on hit and at less negative advantage on block. And it also has a longer cancel window than it did in Season 1, which makes hit confirms much easier. In Season 1, just to give you a bit of information, the crouching medium kick was +1 on hit and -3 on block. Now with the changes, she is +2 on hit and -2 on block, something more coherent and easier to remember. And finally, a lot of players complain that she had too many attacks that use the kick buttons, and so sometimes the inputs overlapped, and when you wanted to get one attack, you got another one. One of those was the Tensenrin, which is basically her kind of pinwheel attack. Considering this is also one of her anti-airs, it was really a shame when you wanted to do that attack and you ended up getting like a fireball store or something. Now that's been changed, so that her kind of pinwheel attacker Tensenrin now is activated with the punch buttons. In addition to that, it's been given more frame advantage on hit for the light version. It's +2 on hit, and the medium version, which is arguably the better anti-air version, was given +10 more damage, so from 110 to 120, which I think is really significant damage for one anti-air. And to look at a few of her nerfs, to go along with a lot of the buffs that she got to her special attacks and her V skill, her standing heavy kick, which is not one of her widely used moves, but still a very good move, was giving more recovery. So from 17 frames to 20. This means that just throwing the move out at the mid range is going to make your opponent likely to punish you for it and counter poke you. To continue, her target combo, the standing medium punch into back or forward heavy punch, in Season 1 was -6, but because of the way the animation worked, it looked like she was still doing an attack when she could block. And so it was really difficult to punish. And Capcom has added an additional 6 frames of block advantage. Or excuse me, has reduced the advantage by 6 frames, meaning she's now at -12. Which means the move is incredibly easy to see when she's punishable. And kind of rounding off her nerfs, her medium kick Fuharen Kyaku attack, that's the release attack where she does the kind of overhead kick, has been given more startup. I suspect that this is because with her V skill being a little bit trickier and she can cancel it from those releases, the fact that this was kind of fast meant that it was a frame trap, and she could also cancel into a left-right. And the fact that now it's has a bit more startup, it of course still functions as a frame trap, but it's likely to be less effective. In the past it had 21 frames of startup, now it has 23. In the grand scheme of things, this doesn't really make the attack much worse. However, it does put her in a situation where she has to be careful of opponents who are just going to mash out of her pressure during this attack. So to look at Juri overall, I mean, she really did see a lot of change that really was to her benefit. The fact that her V skill is usable now as a kind of mix-up is good. The fact that her V trigger got stronger with the fireball being slowed down. The fact that one of her better poke tools, the crouching medium kick, is now better on hit and block. In addition to that, it has a longer cancel window, which means you'll be able to get more hit confirms easier. And just having a better anti-air than most of the casts in Season 2, and one that is more consistent than it was in Season 1, is really going to play to her benefit. Again, I said that I really hoped that she was a character who was great in Season 1, and she ended up being pretty mediocre. And now I think that her tools really put her in a place where she's a character who you have to actually contend with in Season 2. Urien's story is basically the same story as most of the DLC characters from Season 1. He was a character who was middle of the pack, and he wasn't awful, but he just got outshined by the top tiers. Going into Season 2, the top tiers tools, or best tools, were made worse, and Urien was made way better. He's one of the characters in contention as being one of the most hated characters to fight against as far as stronger players are concerned. Just taking a look at some of the changes that he got, he has an additional 25 health, so like Balrog, he's at 1025 instead. His jumping light kick attack is now a cross-up, which makes his jump-ins and his wake-up pressure a bit more scary. Whereas in Season 1, you were basically guaranteed the fact that he was never going to cross you up. And in addition to that, his crouching medium kick, which has insane length, is also much better on hit and block. Excuse me, if his crouching medium kick hits you now, he has +3 frames of advantage on hit, which makes him, in Season 2, at +4. And on block, he also received +4 frame advantage, meaning that if you block one of his best footsie tools, he's at +2. That is an incredibly strong change to Urien. His normals are already long enough, and the fact that he can basically put you at disadvantage by hitting you with one of them at the footsie range is really scary. To continue the buff train, his V trigger got an additional, had an additional 10 damage on every hit of the Aegis Reflector. So in the past, the mirror did 10, 10, and 10. Now it does 20, 20, 20. This is really going to help increase his V-trigger damage and his combo damage off of the mirror, in addition to the other buffs that his normal moves and special attacks got. And finally, a lot of players really complained about the fact that his forward heavy kick was such a nuisance to get around, considering the charging and the charge partitioning, and also the fact that in movement it was hard to use his forward heavy kick. And now it's been changed so that it's specifically the only down forward heavy kick, which should relieve a lot of players who are trying to use other attacks or just the normal heavy kick at either the footsie range or near their opponent in pressure. And to look at a few of his nerfs, his standing medium punch and standing medium kick were made slower. So the fact that his incredibly long-reaching limbs are a bit slower does help the rest of the cast fight against him. In addition to that, his crouching medium punch has more pushback on hit, and this is kind of necessary considering the buff that he got to his standing medium punch, for it now being +6 on hit. Means that he can do standing medium punch, crouching medium punch, and the fact that it has more pushback, the crouching version of the medium punch, means that he's unable to follow up with longer combos, and so that was a kind of necessary nerf to Urien to make sure he didn't get too much damage off of just straight hits, or in close enough hits, as it were. And finally, his standing heavy punch has a bigger hurt box. That's the kind of overhead chopping move that he does on you. The fact that it has a better hurt box means that Uriens that are just kind of throwing it out in front of you are more likely to be punished for it. So after the attack's recovery has started, the standing heavy punch's hurt box stays out longer, and I believe it's also been extended a bit. Yeah, while the buffs and nerfs that are displayed here may not be completely indicative of how strong Urien is of a character, just there were so many changes that happened to him that are really small, that don't seem very strong, but became much stronger. The fact that his crouching heavy punch now juggles as an anti-air is incredibly powerful. The fact that his chariot tackle has increased in juggle potential as well means you can't jump away from it. In addition to that, it's got the heavy version got a damage increase. And to make matters worse, a lot of players are really struggling to deal with Urien's EX Chariot Tackle from even mid-screen. The fact that the game has a bit of input lag means that when he does such a fast move like that, it's much harder to react to in time in order to beat the input lag and the startup of his move. It's almost impossible to jump away from it because the later hitboxes are high, and in addition to that, he can safely cancel it into V-trigger. I believe it is safe on hit or on block as well, so whether he has V-trigger or not is less important, but it does basically give him a free damage or mix-up opportunity from EX Chariot Tackle into his V-trigger, and then set up some sort of mix-up off of that. So yes, Urien is a character who we are going to be seeing a lot of from the likes of people like Nemo, who absolutely saw how strong he could be, and are already devising incredibly difficult mix-ups to block in a lot of situations. Urien is definitely a character to be on the lookout for in Season 2. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Let me know what you thought about the changes so far in the comments below. Also, let us know what characters you'd like to see next. So we are trying to get these out as soon as possible, hopefully finishing up the entire cast in about 2 or 3 weeks. So let us know who you want to see next. Thanks, take care, keep on fighting.